about social gaming, it's not just about Papaya. I actually want to try and look at all of the areas that get involved in getting games discovered, about the state of play with the market, and see where we go from there. This is something where I think that we all have different lessons to learn from each other, so I really do want to try and see if we can make this as interactive as possible. So please don't be shy. I'm going to patronize you to start with. I'm going to tell you what you already know, that mobile's big. We all know this, and we're all involved in the mobile industry, I'm sure. Is there anyone in the room who isn't involved in mobile, but wants to be? Okay, so there's still a few people. That's good. Hopefully we can kind of give you a sense of what you're letting yourself in for. The scale is amazing, and particularly if you look at the stats of what happened on the Android and the iOS app stores in terms of the Christmas period, there's an amazing amount of people out there who love content, who enjoy experiences on their devices. And what we want to do is help make sure that we can get them that entertainment and they can find it. But it's an experience that's fraught with a few issues. Let's look at the App Store. Obviously, the App Store is the white elephant in the room. It's something we have to address if we're going to deal with iPhone games. And there's a massive market potential. But of course, that potential is only there if you can get discovered. And it's a tricky beast. There is no formula. There is no easy answer unless you are able to attract the attention of the editors or find some other method without being seen as tampering. You're going to find it difficult. There are hundreds of apps added every day. I've been trying to find some quoted stats. I keep hearing stats quoted at different events about how many apps are added every day. But even if it was only a couple of hundred a day, if you're that one app, how on earth are you going to get in the top charts? Biggest problem I have, and for those of you who don't know, my background's kind of quite diverse in terms of mobile games. In 2003, we launched three game service, which I managed and ran and operated. In 2005, we delivered 68% of the UK downloads and plays, 45% of the revenue, and we only had 5% of the market. That being said, I was the idiot, or the git, whatever you want to call me, who charged 60% revenue share, so I'm not exactly clean on this one. But what I do know is how you make things sell on an app store. And it means that you have to have eyeballs on new content all the time. And I would argue that at the moment, a lot of the app stores aren't maximizing the potential revenue available, because when you go in and look at the app store, you can still see games that were on there last week, last month, and in some cases last year. Well, when there are hundreds of applications going up every day, and you still continually see apps pushed to you that are years old, how can we have a thriving, vibrant economy in this space? So to me, it's about how do we get smarter, how do we make this work? And unfortunately, it's a little tricky. But there is a good thing here. You know, billing is relatively straightforward, because if you've got an iPhone, you must have a credit card in order to be able to use iTunes. And therefore, we know we can monetize you. So there are some really good things about the Apple Store, but at the same time, there are some real challenges. You know, not least, if you look at the restrictions on very key marketing behaviors, which I would consider personally to be totally reasonable. If you want to be able to know how effective your promotion for a game is, you would reasonably expect to be able to get data of how successful that was from your partner, and I don't believe that's something that you can generally get. At the same time, I think that there are some restrictions on virtual currency that exist in the App Store, which are limiting the potential of some of the things that were talked about earlier, by Gree, by ourselves, by various other people. At the end of the day, we want to encourage and reduce the barriers to people participating and enjoying and consuming our games. But if we don't have that possibility, because of the particular practices of a particular app store, maybe we need to look elsewhere as well. Doesn't mean we don't engage with them. They're a great business, and I don't want to come across as bitching at Apple at all. They have their decisions on what they have to do, and they've got their challenges to face. But these are restrictions that we as developers, as publishers, as distributors have to face up to. These are problems we have to understand and deal with. So what else do we do? Well, we have to look at the other elephant in the room, the Android App Store, the marketplace. And again, it has its scale, it has its opportunity. It's a little bit more flexible. Virtual currency is allowed, but they're becoming more and more strict on the use of the checkout process and how that's managed. And that causes a number of issues you've got to be aware of and deal with. You've got to be able to make sure that you get featured. But one thing I've noticed on the Android marketplace is that if you have a good polished game and people respond to it well, and you've got enough background marketing going on, you can actually get into the top charts. There is still room to get found on the marketplace. But the other thing that's wonderful for me about Android is that it's not the only game in town. So I can go to the Android marketplace, but I can also go to the Amazon store. I can also go to some of the bespoke stores from carriers. I can go to some of the bespoke stores in the different regions. China in particular, I think, has 70 or so different app stores. Obviously, that becomes a different challenge to manage, but we'll talk a bit about that in a second. So a stat here that I thought was quite interesting is, if you look at other app stores, other routes to market on Android, I was talking to the guys at Thumbstar, and they're telling me that they can see something like 200% increase in the revenue that they can get because they're not just focusing on the two big boys. So if we can open up our attention to other distribution mechanisms, we can create a much greater opportunity to be discovered, and therefore a much greater opportunity to generate revenue. What I think is also really interesting is the network effect. If your friends can also get your app despite what device they've got. So I've got an iPhone, you've got an Android device, and we've done a simultaneous release. Even back in the day, we were seeing that has a significant impact on uptake. Another thing, some of these sort of diagrams that lost a little bit in the lighting, but the direct effects of being featured. I think this is a Distimo, Distimo report. It's a really significant factor if you can get discovered. So that means we really want to embrace and be the best friends of the guys who are running the app stores, because not only does it do us good, but it also does them good if they can highlight really good content. So instead of just looking at two stores, let's look at complementary channels. Let's look at all of the techniques available to us in order to make sure that we make the best of our game. And it's not just about finding one partner. It's not one size fits all. We have to realize we've got a product, we've got a service that we're going to share with an audience. So we have to take responsibility for basically addressing that audience. And we might use a publisher, we might use a distributor, we might use a social platform. But we need to use as many of these tools as possible in order to get the value. Just as we would if we were trying to plan how we were going to spend our marketing budget for a tin of beans. It's as important to understand what our audience are going to notice, how they're going to desire our product, and then how we get that to them. And another reason why I'm so keen on the freemium model is that we have the opportunity there to make it so that they get a piece of the game experience before they get to the point of having to make a decision to make a purchase. And that helps us extend the potential audience as well. But let's use all of these techniques. Let's use, the pocket gamers of this world, the MCVs of this world, the trade press, the consumer press, the online services. Let's make sure we get the great reviews. And at the heart of that means let's make sure we create a great game. And let's promote it properly. And let's treat it like grown-up marketing people. Because this is an industry that's been going an awfully long time now. I've been working in this space for 10 years or so. We're a grown-up business now. We have to treat it like any other grown-up business. So let's look at some of the areas of success and failure and how we might go about avoiding it. And some of the mistakes, I borrowed these from loads of places, so apologies to all the different marketeers out there who I may have borrowed your thoughts for. I'm not trying to claim these as specially mine. But we have to target. We have to know who our audiences are, why they want our game, what's going to make them excited about the game. We need to be able to ask ourselves, so what? And if we just follow the traditional marketing approaches, then we just won't get the response that we want. We have to actually address the audience as an audience that's intelligent and selective and sophisticated. We have to actually be able to track it. We have to know, just as we want to know how we can use the data in our gameplay to make our game better, we need to use the data of our marketing experience to market better. And again, I know this is no-brainer for a lot of people, but I think it's useful to have a refresher, a reminder that we have to treat this as a professional piece. And again, if you don't have your data for your marketing activities, you can't A/B test your marketing. And you need to be able to react to the changing market, because if there's hundreds of apps going out every day, getting this stuff right becomes even more important, because we're investing lots of money and time and effort and energy and passion in creating a game experience. So let's use all the tools available to us to get it right. We also have to understand the value of the acquisition. A lot of work is done on working out the cost of acquisition. So, I think it's currently on Facebook about $1.80 in order to be able to acquire a paying customer. And that's great. But different sources of media don't just deliver customers who pay. Some deliver customers who pay a lot. And identifying who those individuals, who those sources are, is just as important as understanding how we're going to get any awareness and any use. And virality is part of that, understanding how we can make the most of every action that we do. So each action creates a viral interaction with other people. So every customer begets another customer. If we can create that sense of virality through our marketing activities, as well as our playing activities, then we're going to be more successful. And this just reinforces this point about not relying on one marketplace, not relying on just one platform. And we know there are two great platforms out there, Android and iOS, but within those platforms, particularly with an Android, there are lots of opportunities to get a wider approach. So, like I say, cost of applications campaigns are going up, the cost of acquisition of a customer is going up. We have to look for the distribution channels that allow us to get the best resources. We've got to find the audience and communicate to them. Find the audience that's going to generate money for us. The rate of downloads is increasing. It's not like people aren't spending more time on their phone. They are. But they're using different sources of information in order to decide what content they're going to download, because they can't rely on finding the best content through the current app stores. Free app of the day, as I've said before, isn't working anymore. When 65% of the deck is free anyway, I would argue the value of a free app of the day promotion is only the value of having a promotion. So we need to give people a reason to download, whatever that might be. We need them to anticipate and desire the content that we've got, and we've got to help communicate to them that that's worth doing. And then we need to build a loyal audience. So, how do we do that? Well, unsurprisingly, I think it's all about social. And obviously, I think we have to have freemium games. But at the end of the day, the thing I think will drive spending and discovery and monetization is very similar to what Ethan was saying this morning. We need people to find things that they care about and that their friends care about. People that they care about this content. So we need to make sure that we encourage communication in the game, that we encourage the ability to show off, the ability to achieve. It goes a little bit to Richard Bartle's conversation yesterday about player types. There's a careful balance between making good use of understanding the reward behaviors that individual players get out of using your content that's really useful for understanding how best to communicate to them and how best to get them excited and engaged in your content. Has its risks, of course, because it's not a perfect model, but it's a great way of at least applying intelligence to the way we both market and deliver a gaming experience. So we need to create those meaningful interactions. We also need to create ways for people to come back. In some ways, the biggest challenge, I think, of game design right now is not the game design itself. It's the design of what happens after the game. It's the design of the thing that draws you back into the playing experience time and time again, and that makes you actively want to get your friends to be part of that experience. And I think that use of leaderboards, challenges, daily bonuses, all these techniques that have shown time and time again to work, these are really important. And we need to sort of use those for our benefit. And again, I repeat, and if you can't show off why this game is valuable to you, to other people, you're not going to be able to generate revenue
of the levels that we've been able to see in some of the games we've got. Games like X City, Zombies, oh my God, are generating, $10 monthly ARPUs for paying user. They're getting, 10, 15% conversion rates. That's not an accident. They've designed in experiences that make a good, fun time valuable to come back to play and play and play and play and play and play and then play. So let's look at Zombies. And okay, it's a very traditional, flavor of an existing game on Facebook. But they've done various changes to the gameplay mechanic to make sure that the game works well socially. Although those are different sort of sizes, they're actually for the same period. The top chart is about the DAU, and the bottom chart is about the revenue. And what happened there was the only promotion we did for that particular game was a 3-day period of P-mails. That's an internal communication system we use in Papaya. We're a social network solution, so we have our own social graph. So we use that social graph, and we use the messaging systems in that to promote a game. So we did 3 days of promotion, happened early on, and no other promotion happened. And yet we saw this accelerator effect. That growth rate reflects what happens when virality takes off, and a game that drives and drives and drives, and within 4 weeks we had 500,000 downloads of that game, and it's generating really good revenues. And I don't do that, I'm not saying this so I can say, wow, isn't Papaya great? What I'm saying is, if you market your product effectively, if you think about how people are going to discover their content, and you maximize the opportunity to be discovered because you're using all of the channels available to you, that's great, and that's really effective. But what I'd like to suggest is that if you haven't put in the social viral factors into your gaming experience, you're only getting a small proportion of the value. You'd be getting the kind of output you'd see where the top graph peaks out. You'd be missing that acceleration of people telling other people that they have a shared experience with, that this game is worth doing, this game is worth playing. You'd miss out on that discovery. And I think that's what makes the difference between promotion and discovery, is that you can tie in all of the marketing medium with the word of mouth that comes with socialization. So, one quick plug, sort of connected to this, is Tapjoy. I mean, we work with Tapjoy. In fact, we've got an exclusive relationship with them, so we can apply our social graph to their offer wall. So what we're saying there is an incentivized download, a reason to download the game, free currency to play the game. So that's like saying, hang on a minute, we think this game is so good, not only are we not going to charge you to come into our bar and enjoy our experience, we're going to give you some free drinks as well. We're going to let you have some free currency to play the game. Well, that's a really powerful experience, because what you're doing is you're allowing the user to become trained in playing this game experience. And you're allowing them to find that and be incentivized to do that. And if they don't like it, they can use the virtual currency on another game. But you're still giving them value. You're still giving them interest. And with the social graph applied to the offer, we're only going to get offers pushed to you that your social group are interested in too. So the likelihood that the offers are relevant to you should go up. So we're quite excited about where this will take us. It's still very new. We haven't got any data we can share on it yet. But we're very interested in finding people who are using Tapjoy and want to use us and see how that works. At the end of the day, though, there is one factor that's more important than anything, which is let's make a decent game. Let's make a game that people are actively thrilled to bits to play and that fits their mode of use of the device that they're playing as perfectly as possible. Because I'm waiting at that bus, I want to play a game that makes me feel good, that satisfies that moment I've got of entertainment, that lets me want to spend money, makes me want to entertain myself, makes me want to come back and play again and again. Essentially, that's all I was going to talk about. Just to give anyone in the room who doesn't know who Papaya are, we're an audience of 50 million users, but passionate players of social games, and with an average revenue of quite a larger number, which you can read for yourself. So, we really are interested in creating better games and helping developers understand the techniques that are used by the best of the game developers we work with, who monetize effectively and use all of these social discovery methods we've been talking about. And the last plug is we're actually going to have a further chat on multiplayer games later tonight at the Thumb Bar. We've got Philip from Big Point. We've got Michael from Fish Labs. We've got Matthias and Robert from Exit and Exozet, respectively. We've got a really good bunch of guys. We're going to have a row about what's important in multiplayer games. So if you want to join us, come and grab me. I've got some flyers and show you where it is. So that was all I was going to do. Hope that's interesting. Any questions? We have a question. Excellent. By the way, you can ask me anything on social gaming. I'm very open-minded.
Okay. No, hi. Just a quick question. Do you think that Android will become more, important for the game developers than iOS?
Absolutely.
And when?
Well, I think that Apple have a massive advantage in some ways because they have a great deal of control over the way their market environment works. However, my gut feeling is that the Android market is a Darwinian place. It's a place where we've had to try harder because we can't expect users to have a credit card. We have to engage them in such a way that they go through the various layers in order to find ways to pay us to play the games. Now, if we've managed to pull that off, and obviously we have, then what you've done is you've managed to create an audience that's already committed to playing a game experience with you. You've had to work harder. You have to be stronger and fitter. And I think that people who've managed to do that and understand that model, when they then go back to the Apple market, will compete much more effectively. Of course, at the moment, it's a bit more complicated because of the restrictions and some of the marketing techniques you can do. But there's another advantage. It's not the only app store in town. So the marketplace itself has to be Darwinian because it's got to compete with Amazon. It's got to compete with the operator portals. And they've all got to compete with each other. And I'm a big believer that competition is a great drive for innovation. But we're in the early days of that. But if you, like I say, talk to the Thumbstar guys, and we've got Gareth there waving his hands. They're telling me that they can get 200% extra money out of going through those tier 2, tier 3 app stores. And I think if you think about that, that's not something we can do in Apple because there is only really the one group we can go to. Does that answer the question? Cool. Any more? Come on, I dare you. I'll start dancing if you don't ask a question. Joke. Really not going to do that. Okay. Oh, question here. Excellent. Oh, okay. You don't count, Michael.
Yeah, that's all right. I hope you don't mind. So you were talking about iOS and Android. How about other platforms? I mean, we still see in the emerging markets so many different things like there's still Symbian out there, there's still Java, and in Brazil there's still Brew. I mean, we don't cover it anymore because we don't see the money in here. However, I still have the feeling if there was a possibility, in particular leveraging social gaming for this huge potential gamer audience, there must be something. Any plans, any ideas?
I think it's a really good point. I have to be careful because I've got my kind of papaya hat versus my kind of general way of thinking. I'll lean towards, even though Chris is back there, I'll give you the frank answer. The frank answer is there is a long tail. It's absolutely no question. If you talk to, Chris, the Handy Games guys, they make a great living out of the long tail. Because the problems of fragmentation that we complain about in Android were obviously, as you know, infinitely worse in Java. And yet they were solved. Most of the developers who survived through that solved fragmentation. Now, if you've gone to the bother of solving fragmentation in Java, and given that I forgot what the proportion of smartphones is. Is it something like 20% worldwide or something? It's not. 14%. Sorry, Gareth. Thanks, Gareth. So 14% of the world has a smartphone. And obviously, we're focusing on smartphones right now. Well, if that's true, there's that significant proportion. Okay, there's still a few black and whites that don't have even Java on. I'm sure there are still some of the horrible 3G clamshells we used to have back in the 3 days. But the point for me is that if you're an established developer who've already solved that Java problem, you would be daft not to try and squeeze the last ounces out of it. However, I think that the profile of that audience in terms of their spending habits is too low to be viable for anyone who's a new entrant to that. And I think that the market opportunity in smartphones is too great for you to put your efforts in that market. So I think that's one of the reasons why us as Papaya, we haven't taken other routes. But there are some ways, obviously we have to think about, what do we do about Barda? What do we do about BlackBerry? What do we do about Windows Mobile 7? Now, there is a point where you have to decide, is that market viable or not? And then you have to decide what happens to HTML5. Will we get performance? I know Davaris talked about that. Performance is a really key factor. So at the end of the day, it's going to come down to you as a business. What do you think you can get out of it? And is it worth your extra time and trouble to do that? And I think that's an open question for a lot of people, unless you're an established player in that area. Does that make sense? Cool. We have another question?
Yes. Hello, Oscar. And as a developer, do you make any forecast from a beginning? If I want to publish a game with Papaya, do you make any forecast about the target and the possibilities of that game?
We tend not to, because everything's down to the game design. But like I say, there are some really great examples, and we've got some key games which are generating, well, some have downloaded millions, but the majority of the really good ones are probably in the hundreds of thousands, 500,000 downloads, like Zombies Oh My God will deliver. But then what we'll see from that is this really high conversion rate, sort of 10 to 15% in some of the games. In fact, we actually had one game that was doing 24%, which completely blows my mind how on earth they managed to get 24% conversion. But then we'll see quite a high ARPU per paying user. And the paying users are people who tend to pay on more than one game. So it's a really tough call. But probably the simplest thing is 2 guys out of Beijing built this game called X City. X City is delivering them $1,000 a day. And that's just 2 guys out of Beijing making one Cityville-like game. And I think if that's a guideline, it's not a bad way of looking at game development from my point of view. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Also, if you want to put the game by yourself, there's any possibility now with the fragmentation that you have been explained, or not?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Or it's a miracle too?
I mean, obviously, use our game engine, use someone else's, doesn't matter. Marmalade, we've got integration to Unity, we've got integration to others. The guys who were in Beijing were, like I say, 2 guys using our game engine, which has all of the plugins for the social SDK all nice and readily available. In fact, in my spare time, I'm planning to do one myself. So, any more for any more? Is that a yawn or a hand? I think it's a yawn. Okay, guys, thanks very much.